Hello and welcome to the next video for the channel. This is actually a rescape of the Rapa Nui tank, which was in our living room. As you can see, the Rapa Nui head is no longer visible, so it's about time to do a bit of a change. This has been established for about a year now, so the Anubias that you can see attached to the rocks have gone a little bit too big. They're preventing a lot of light from getting down to the bottom, but we will keep those and reuse some of them in this scape. You can see that the roots have actually utilised the aqua soil that's in the bags quite well. And stirring up the gravel in the bottom will allow me to actually take some of the dirt out of the bottom without too much difficulty. I did try to take some of the fish out with the water level at this point, but it was a little bit too much, so I took the water level down a little bit further. This tank's going to need a good clean, so we'll give it a clean out. So I'm going to use all of the substrate again, but the algae is built up on the sides and the back a bit. I don't usually keep scraping the sides and the back because it's relatively natural and doesn't do any harm in the tank, so the front gets scraped down a lot more often than the sides do. But because the algae is pretty firmly attached, just using a razor scraper there. So we are going to reuse some of the substrate that was used in the old tank here, so it worked out quite well. Took out some of the roots and we will use some new substrate to replenish the nutrients. Decided to use black sand this time. The only other tank we've got black sand in is the cave tank, so it's a nice change. And just adding some new aqua soil here, just to help out with the depth in order to plant into. And some NutriBase here, which will add a few extra nutrients to the substrate. So now placing the rock, this is Seriostone. We wanted a explosion style tank, so it's just placing the rocks in a format that allows it to cascade out from the centre, which can be a little bit awkward as you're trying to balance rocks at angles. We also wanted to put some wood in here. I'm not sure what this type of wood is called, but it gives some nice height. This tank is a bespoke built tank, so it's actually quite tall, and therefore that means that you want to actually kind of get some height when you're scaping the tank. So just topping up some of the areas at the back with some more substrate, just again to get a bit more depth for the stem plants. And we're going to add some root tabs in, which will give some extra fertiliser for the soil. Just popping one in each area that's going to have the majority of the plants. So now we need to make sure that these rocks and wood are all very well glued in place. So the wood particularly, because it will float because it's brand new. So that is being stuck to the rock themselves. But equally, because the rock are balanced in relatively precarious positions, you need a little bit of super glue just to hold it together. Any super glue, as long as it's a cyanoacrylate super glue, is fish safe, because after it cures it hardens to like a plastic, which is inert in the water, so it's not going to leach any bad chemicals into the water. Just adding a few more twigs here, again with a little bit of super glue to hold them down, just to make it look as if it's growing out of the rock itself rather than just a lot of grey. So the nice thing about this rock formation is that we do have Kuhli loaches in this tank, and the rocks will provide a lot of space for them to play. And I just thought that the tops of the wood was a little bit sparse, so I'm going to attach a few more small branches to these so that it actually protrudes slightly into the negative space of the tank. I do regret that one slightly because it ends up being quite close to the front of the tank, which obviously makes it a little bit inconvenient when you're scraping the front, but never mind. So now we can plant it. This is a new one for me. It's a bulb plant. It's called Crinum calamistratum. It essentially looks like an onion and puts out some kind of tall spiral leaves. I'm going to pop it in the centre so that it's a bit of a feature, and hopefully it will grow tall enough to kind of spread its tendrils out across the top of the tank. So this next one is an Echinodorus, so a Amazon sword. I'm keeping this in an area which is going to get the light and also has a relatively deep substrate. This is a new plant for me. I'm not entirely sure what it's called, but it's got lovely red stem and quite pointed leaves. Almost looks a little bit like a eucalyptus plant. Obviously not a eucalyptus. So that adds a nice variety of different leaf shape sat amongst the swords and the Crinum. What you will notice is one of the major things that I've forgotten in this build is the filter. So I realised once I'd finished planting the scape that I hadn't left room for the filter, so ended up putting that on the right hand side. I had to do a little bit of shuffling around and it kind of ended up being wedged, which makes it a bit awkward. So this is one of the Anubiases in the old scape, so I'm just cutting it in half here so that I can use it in 2 points, so one on one side of the scape and the other part on the other side. So the one on the right was just nicely wedged in, but the one on the left, because it's balanced on the top, it just needs a little bit of super glue to hold it in place. So this is a pinafitida. I've not had a huge amount of luck with this plant, but I'm going to try it in here. It can work as a stem plant, but also work as a epiphyte, which means that it takes nutrients from the water column. So I'm going to try it as an epiphyte in here and see whether it works. And then we've got a little bit of the Rotala indica as a little bit more of a mid-ground plant. So that's a Lobelia cardinalis dwarf, so it's a smaller, low growing plant. So we'll put that one a little bit more towards the foreground. I wanted to keep most of the foreground clear in this scape to give the cories a bit more space to roam around in, but again, just in front of the Rotala is quite a nice place for it. And then we've got a couple of little Anubiases. These are Anubias bonsais, so these will be used to tuck in the gaps with the rock. It will also help cover any super glue marks from gluing the wood in place. And then a couple of little buces. So these are little Bucephalandra species. Can't remember which types they are, but it just adds a different variety of leaf shape again. Okay, time to fill up the tank. This one's quite an easy fill because there's no nutrients in the front of the tank, so I don't need to worry about stirring up any of that. And then we can get the fish in. So I missed recording it, but I did add in some water conditioner and some beneficial bacteria, and I will keep an eye on it over the next couple of weeks. So this is the tank now that the fish are back in. You can see we've got 5 of the gold barbs here, and we've got our platy, who thinks he's a barb. For anybody who's been watching the channel for a while, this was the first baby we had when we had a trio of platies. So he's called Tempest. And then we have the cardinals in here, as well as some white tetras. Gold tetras I think they're called, but they're essentially white. We do also have in this tank the Kuhli loaches, but they won't be out for us to be able to show you. They usually come out in the night time and have a bit of a wiggle around, so unfortunately we won't get any footage of them today. There's also a Hillstream loach in here called Pancake, so we'll get some video of him as well. For now, I will leave you with some video of the fish without me talking. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do stay tuned for more on the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and please like and comment. We'll see you again next time.